Hi all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted chats with some of the most interesting culinary voices in the American South. This region is one of the country's vacation and retirement playgrounds. But beyond the warm weather and beautiful scenery, there's a rich culture steeped in community and often dark and complicated history, and plenty of innovation among the tradition. I'm Stephanie Burt, and I've spent a career covering this region for magazines, newspapers, and websites. And to me, the best introduction to the American South is through its food culture and the growers and makers who make it delicious. I invite you to come on the road with me from the Appalachian Mountains to the clear waters of the Gulf of Mexico and everywhere in between. I'm always hungry for that next bite, thirsty for the next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is sponsored today by the Germantown Inn in Nashville, Tennessee. Nashville's really boomed in the last decade, and every time I go, I'm reminded how many other people love it too. It can be really crowded. The last couple of trips, I've loved tucking into the Germantown neighborhood for a respite from all the city has to offer. Historic Germantown, listed on the National Register of Historic Places, is a dynamic community composed of renovated historic structures and new constructions. It has some of my favorite dining options in the city. Here's looking at you, Henrietta Red. Plenty of shopping too, and its tree-lined streets are only blocks from the downtown Nashville Entertainment District. The Germantown Inn, located right in the neighborhood, is a charming property originally constructed in 1865, but with modern lodging amenities that feel luxurious. This locally owned boutique hotel has a partnership with a day spa in the neighborhood, unique suites that are well appointed, and plenty of little touches by the attentive staff throughout the stay. I can't wait to get back to Nashville soon and stay at the Germantown Inn. So when you're planning your next Tennessee trip, consider making this unique inn your respite too. Roosevelt Brownlee lives on the curve of a quiet street in Savannah, Georgia, the tall stalks of okra in his vegetable garden just visible from the side drive. It's one of many such streets in the port city and only a few minutes from the old city market area where he spent his earliest years. But in between those two Savannah addresses, Roosevelt has traveled the world, from France to Africa, the Caribbean to Denmark, cooking for everyone from Muddy Waters and Stan Getz to Nina Simone and the Rothchild family. His fried chicken was famous in Europe, and his family's red rice recipe honed and tweaked in chateau kitchens. With every deviled crab and pan of mac and cheese, he brought comfort and sustenance to jazz musicians hungry for a taste of home, and at the same time introduced countless newcomers to the joys of good Southern cooking. Although he's cooked for much of the last 2 decades in Savannah kitchens, he's mostly retired now, though every so often you can see him at special events in the Lowcountry, big hotel spoon in hand, stirring a pan or a pot of something. If that happens, make sure that you get a taste of what he's cooking. Remember, it's the true stuff of legend. Welcome to the Southern Fork, Roosevelt.
Thank you.
Well, I'm very excited to have you on today. I have been on a quest to get you to say yes to this microphone for a few years. And I'm just really excited for people to hear your story, which I feel there is absolutely no way we can get on this podcast because your story is fantastical, massive. You have lived so many different lives and done so many different things. So we're really going to focus on the cooking part of your life today. I know that you cooked in Vietnam, and we've spoken about that, and that's really where you became a cook, right?
Partly. Gotten a lot of experience in Vietnam, what you might call field experience.
Yes, field experience. You were telling me a story about cracking eggs for like 3 hours to stir on a ship. That is definitely some field experience. But I think you and I connected over my love of jazz, and that you actually fueled through food so many musicians in, was it the 60s and the 70s, or 70s and 80s?
The 70s and 80s.
Yeah. And that is where the Best of Harlem came in. Could you tell us that story?
Well,
because you're not from Harlem. You're from Savannah, Georgia.
No. My boss, Jack Jordan, owned a restaurant in Stockholm, Sweden, by the name of the Best of Harlem.
And that's where you moved and lived after your service.
Yes, I lived in Sweden, and I worked for him at a restaurant in Stockholm, Sweden. And he was the Josephine Baker road manager, but she was not living at the time that I worked for him.
So he had been doing that before, Best of Harlem. Mm-hmm.
I think she died the year before I met him.
And then how did you work your way into, literally cook your way into the jazz festival circuit?
Well, by reputation, I got introduced to him through a friend who went to his restaurant once in Stockholm and told him that his food was not up to par, and he knew a cook in another town that could cook soul food.
Did you consider it soul food?
Well, that's what they called it at that time, which macaroni and cheese, collard greens, and fried chicken.
Yeah, it was soul food. Yeah. So then you came in to cook for Mr. Jordan. What's his first name?
Jack Jordan.
Jack Jordan. You came in to cook for him. What was the dish that sent him over the edge and said, yes, you need to come here?
Basically, everything.
He needed your help.
He needed help really bad because the staff was not, as the name said, Harlem. And we started off with the chicken, fried chicken, the coleslaw, and believe it or not, a club sandwich. They didn't know how to make a basic club sandwich.
So you could crush that pretty easily.
Well, a basic club sandwich.
Yeah, right.
is something, everyone could do.
Right. And then how did you transition once you got into Best of Harlem to being on
the Montreux Festival? The restaurant, because of the management, when I got there, it was really in dire. I worked probably 3 months, and I had to go back to what I call home, my town.
In Sweden.
Sweden. I had applied to go to school too. And when I graduated from the school, I took a course in learning the language. And just by some chance, the day I graduated, came home, there was a letter inviting me to go to Switzerland. The letter was from Jack Jordan, and it said there was a plane ticket for me to come to Switzerland and to give him a call, and they would pay for my transportation, hotel, and
So the fried chicken was really good.
Yes, yes. And the cook for the musicians.
Yes. And so who were some of those musicians? I think you've given me this list before, but I never tire of hearing it.
Well, there was a list, he said, for 2 weeks for the bicentennial celebration, and he named a whole lot of people. He said, just come. I said, sure, I'll be there. But Dizzy Gillespie, Al Jarreau was up and coming. He had a big hit, and we were into Al Jarreau at that time because we used to buy all of the latest records came out. George Duke, Billy Cobham. That's all he had to say, because we were into jazz, other than the standard jazz musician.
It was a good time. It was the Herbie Hancock
era,
right?
Herbie and, oh, wow.
Yeah,
there was so many. Going to Switzerland, they supplied everything. Once we got there, I think we stayed 2 weeks. 2 weeks in Switzerland. They liked everything we did, and it also brought out a lot of other promoters and directors of other festivals throughout Europe who was trying to recruit some of the musicians for their festival up and coming, and they recruited us.
They said, if you come, I bet those other people will come too, right?
Yes.
So then you were off and running, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So then how long did you do this particular kind of festival work? Do you know?
76 through 79.
That's a good stint.
Yeah.
That's a good gig.
I came back home. Could have done it longer, but I came home in 79, 80. I moved back home.
Back home. Home?
Yeah.
Here home. So home is Savannah, Georgia. But then you moved out to Defusky.
Yes.
And you became the deviled crab guy.
I begged Miss Pazan at the Gullah Festival back in 85. I begged her to let me sell because they only had one food vendor. The food vendor there was some of the people, not all, some were complaining that there were pork in not every dish, but
a lot of pork.
A lot of the dishes.
We've heard that for Southern food for a long time, haven't we?
Yes. I said, Miss Pazan, I can get some Defusky devil crab. And so she said, okay, just crab. I said, what about some boiled corn? I can sell corn. So she allowed me to do the corn and the crab.
And as a kid, I was discovering deviled crab, which had been generations of people eating it here, but I was discovering it at my fish camp outside of Charlotte, North Carolina in Belmont, and I landed on that deviled crab. I have never forgotten it. It was always my favorite, and I would ask for a child's portion, but then I wanted my own deviled crab. When you were in Europe, what was the food, and in Vietnam, what was the food that you missed most from this home? Because food can make you homesick, and it can also help soothe that homesickness too, right?
Yes. We had certain cravings, and believe it or not, I could remember craving ribs. Barbecue ribs. I craved some barbecue ribs. And
then you're like, I have to fix these for myself because nobody knows how to do it over here. You cooked for so many, many people, and you're sitting in the room in so many places. And one of the most famous is not somebody that you readily cooked for, right? But had a lot of influence on you. Bob Marley?
Bob, I would say Bob Cook had a lot of influence.
Mm-hmm.
I liked his movement and things.
So Bob had his own personal cook when he was on tour.
Yeah.
And you were kind of in that world with the other musicians, so you interacted with Bob's cook.
I learned from Gilly some stuff that I still use today. And
although you're mainly retired. I just want to make sure that Southern Fork listeners know that, because Roosevelt wanted me to make sure that Southern Fork listeners knew that.
Yes. Yeah. But
he was like, don't sell me too hard now.
But things that he did and his movement, even though Bob was famous and there'd be a few people around when Gilly was working, he was working.
That kind of mindset of people are people.
Yeah.
I just got to put my head down and work. That really influenced you. You have that connection to the Rastafarian life. Is that where it started?
Later on in my move, once I'd moved back to the States, that it began to be a little more serious. But when I was in Europe, it was a different story for me. I was more happy-go-lucky, wanting a little party, and still had that European mentality of out and about.
Who was your favorite to cook for from that era?
Wow.
If you had to pick just a couple.
If I had to pick a couple of people, I would say famous or...
Well, I mean, preferably for the podcast, yes.
Because I was in they call the belly of France, and we was in this chateau, and I loved being in that place. And there was, you can say famous, used to come through on a weekend. If we were there, they would come through, but you would never know. You would never know. One of the Rothchilds, he and the wife used to come through, but you would never know. And we would have dinner, but the dinner probably started at 7, and when we were through, it'll be about 11:30, 12 at night.
And you got to clean. Well, and those kind of dinners, did you ever, did you stay in the soul food genre, or did you add new things to your repertoire?
Yes, it would be soul food, because that's why they came. And,
I'm sensing a theme.
And it would be, they would come for the fried chicken.
I understand. I'm quite aware. I drive around the country based on where I'm going to eat. So yes. I get it.
Yes.
Then you come back to Defusky and you really become an activist for civil rights. And how would you talk about the activism and how it mixed with the food?
Well, there's a saying they use, picked up in Jamaica, that if everybody try to sell banana, who gonna buy? And I kind of saw a little of that on the Fusky. If everybody's selling devil crab, people buy, but you don't have a good market, because you bring a little friction there. Maybe you can specialize in that old muscadine wine. Some people like Miss Janie crab, some like Miss Ethel May, some like Jake crab. It depends, but a lot of like Jake crab, because Jake get out there first. So it just depends.
It just depends, yeah. So what did you love about the island life in that era on Defusky, that kind of late 80s era?
Laid back, and if you don't have a boat, you're there. Once you're there,
Until you need something, you got to figure out how to get it. There's no bridge to Defusky, Southern Fork listeners. And a lot of people want to keep it that way.
Right. Lots of...
So there are ferries and private boats that you can pay, but it's a different kind of lifestyle when you're out there.
It's different, totally different.
People help each other. They
will help in time of need. They will help you out, but you feel that they won't.
Oh, right.
You see, but they will help you in time of need.
Shrimp and crab and fish yourself, right?
Yes, but all of a sudden someone may drop by your house and give you a couple.
Yeah. And then you're doing well at that point. Now, I know you've got okra growing in the backyard.
Yes.
And I know that you've some pole beans out there too, I think.
Sea Island red peas.
Sea Island red peas, of course.
Cherokee purple runners.
Oh, love it. Oh, well, I should stick around for those then. Have you always gardened?
Yes, for a while, not this much or this heavy. Yeah, well, I started out a while. I learned how to make dirt from a friend of mine from Jamaica. He showed me how to make my own dirt. Just enough.
So you finally decided to put down some roots when you came back.
Yes, only because of my father that I decided to stay.
You wanted to be with him?
Well, yes and no. Yes, I did. And no, I didn't. Because I got that itch now. I want to go back and do some more traveling.
Yeah. I had to fit into your travel schedule because you were in Amsterdam?
Denmark.
Yes. Cooking has taken you all over the world, Roosevelt.
Yes. And it was a surprise to me that my stay in Denmark, that people still remembered me, and they did know about my venture, and the question that they wanted to know about Bob Marley, just like
we had that talk beforehand. Don't make it. You're famous. You're famous there.
I was just curious, because usually European people, they're not so, starstruck like that. But, yeah.
At one point, you told me that when you were sourcing your food, that you'd have people sneak behind you in the grocery store to see what you were getting. Yeah. Did you have anybody do that this trip?
No. No.
I love it. Well, what do you still love about cooking? What makes you hungry about cooking still after doing it for so many years and giving people so much joy through it?
Just new techniques that's out there and new foods. I'm learning new food that I'm seeing. My taste buds still works, and I'm open for new ventures.
Yeah.
I just saw a dish. I don't know if I'll try it, but it looked very interesting.
So you still got the itch, just like you have for the travel itch. You got the trying new dishes itch.
Yes.
I like that. What's one aspect of cooking and organizing a lot of things like in a field kitchen? Basically what you're doing at all these jazz festivals and Defusky is your field conditions, right? What is an aspect of that meshes with your natural personality?
Yes, the Army taught me that, and also being young, at a young age, growing up in City Market and moving around like we did from there. I stayed at what we call here the Old Fort. So it was a lot of cutting wood in the backyard and the wood stove. You had tasks.
So you were never sitting. You were busy doing things.
Yeah, you had tasks. Bringing in the wood had to be organized. It had to be by the stove at a certain place. And then there was also the coal. The coal had to be certain place. And the wood had to be stacked certain place in the yard. Especially with that mother. When we went to stay with her. All us kids, we were young. Like 8, 9, we had tasks, and she was straight. I'm talking, you don't mess around with baby Tony. She was strict. So, we had tasks. There was organized tasks for kids.
So you could translate that easy to cooking for bunches of people all the time.
Yes, because you're already organized. So those things led up, to bigger things. That's why I said when I saw Gilly work, Bob Marley cook work, a lot of other things just kicked in, and I was pretty good with it because that's what he was doing.
Yeah, he was organizing.
Yeah.
And keeping his head on task, even though he was around a bunch of famous people, he wasn't getting starstruck.
Right.
He was staying on the task.
Right.
What's one thing keeping you up at night?
The job.
Your job?
The job, the job I've had. I used to go to work. Well, I had to open up sometime at 6:30 or 7 o'clock because they gave me the key. Roosevelt, you're dependable. Here's the key. Because you're going to be here at 7. Yeah, okay. And the job sometime 2. I get home, restaurant, kitchen closed at 9. By the time we are out of there, it's 11:30 or 12. You just don't go home as tired as you are and go to bed. You have to unwind.
Right.
So,
yes,
I'm up again. And that for years got me.
That's your same schedule.
I'm on that schedule. You can call me at night. I'm not saying do it, but you can call me at 1 o'clock.
Too late now. I'm already gonna do
it. Roosevelt answer that phone because he's up.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, but that's, that circadian rhythm. You've built it from doing what you've been doing for 50 years.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
Wow. Well, I'm honored to sit at your dining room table and talk to you with a chopstick mic today. It's my sincere pleasure to come and visit you in Savannah. And I'm also honored to welcome you to the Southern Fork family of guests. And so this is my last question, and I like to call it the magic picnic basket question. I used to ask about death row meals. Basically, it's another way to say, like, what's your favorite food, right? What would be your favorite? But I don't believe in the death penalty. So instead, I want to fill a basket with some things that bring you life. With this magic picnic basket, I can time travel and go back and script anybody to make a bite of one more thing you would like to have. I can source for you, and I can cook a little bit, and I definitely owe you a meal. So what can I put in that basket? It doesn't have to go together, just some things that sound really good, like some things that always bring you happiness.
Wow. There's something that I really, it's a meal that I would like, but it's a shared meal. That something that I really missed. It's a groundnut stew. It used to be the chicken, but it's the fish now with a good fufu. I mean, a nice pepper groundnut stew with a nice fufu and a nice communal eating.
all sharing it.
Yes, and also not being partial or anything. Well, yeah, you can say partial. Ghana.
Being in Ghana, eating groundnut stew with fufu.
And fish. Smoked fish and fresh fish. That would be so delicious for me. I mean, that's what I would.
That is going to be in your picnic basket then.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, if people want to learn more about Roosevelt Brownlee, you know where to go. Go to thesouthernfork.com, although he would also like me to remind you one more time that he is retired, so don't call him. But we are going to have images there as well as the face behind the voice. So if you like what you hear, there are more than 360 episodes in the archives. This is a wide, deep well of creativity here in the American South, and Roosevelt has been behind the scenes and in a lot of places where things were happening, and he was there cooking, keeping them all fed so they could keep going. So I appreciate all that you've done for me, and as well for appreciate your time today. Thank you.
And thank you
immensely. Hello and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. There is a short film featuring Roosevelt Brownlee, and I have linked that film in the show notes, so you can go to thesouthernfork.com and you can click through the hot link on Roosevelt's name, and it will take you directly to this short film. It is from 2015. It's under 10 minutes, and it is one of Joe York's films. Joe York is a wonderful Southern filmmaker. I believe he lives in Mississippi. He worked for years with the Southern Foodways Alliance and really produced some beautiful films about Southern American foodways. I have watched many of them through the years. You can find them on the Southern Foodways Alliance website, many of those. You can also just Google Joe York filmmaker and find a lot of those floating around the internet. I've really gotten a lot out of Joe's films, and it was so fun in doing my research for our upcoming conversation and realizing that there was a Joe York film about Roosevelt. So anyway, that is my extracurricular tip of the day. I hope that you're doing well and staying cool. We are deep in the dog days of summer here in the South, and I don't know about you, but it's hot where I am. So stay cool out there. Watch a video or two on the web, and I will be right here next week.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you going to eat all that?